Matthew is the Head of Legal Informatics at Gilbert and Tobin. He leads a specialised in-house multidisciplinary team that use a variety of data and tools. He has 20 years of experience in legal technology, including 2 of Australia's preeminent law firms, ALSM for 13 years and Gilbert and Tobin for 7. He is also chair of the Association of Litigation Support Managers. So if anybody has some litigation, I'm sure he's available for consultation afterwards. And he's also an advisory board member of Information Governance ANZ. So over to Matthew.
Thanks. So I thought I'd set the scene on ways in which AI is used and where it's used in the industry. I'm not going to focus on the ones on the right-hand side, but basically you've got expert decision systems, predictive analytics, legal research. They're largely bigger in the US than Australia, so I won't focus on those, although one of them is an Australian company. So I'm going to talk about automated document review and eDiscovery. So jumping right into automated document review, so what I mean by this is contract review. So in a legal process called due diligence, which is part of mergers and acquisitions. What does all this mean? It means that lawyers are looking at contracts, key contracts, where a company is divesting itself of a business or another company wants to buy a business. And so the lawyers need to do an assessment with no time and a lot of pressure to work out what are the liabilities, what are the problems with the business, what are they not telling us. They then form an opinion, give an advice to the merchant bankers. They then put a bid in for the business. So we, and the reason it's a big deal is a contract may be 300 pages, 200 pages. It may take a lawyer 4, 5, 6, 7 hours to read a contract, and there may be average is about 500 contracts per M&A deal. So that's a lot of time. So there are kind of 2 things we're doing here. One is we have systems that give us dashboards. So just using this insight gives you a snap decision, or gives you, I guess, a roadmap of what largely are the things that are in there. So you may not be able to see it, but you're picking out, so entity extraction, so languages, currencies. In the bottom right quadrant is a spatial map. That's a 3D thing that spins around, but I wasn't doing 3D here, but it's really cool. But and then in the center is the contract clauses. So these systems have been trained to either trained by us or trained globally to identify frequent clauses in contracts. So where we use this kind of dashboard is you can see immediately, say, I've got 20 IP contracts, and of those IP contracts, I'm making it up, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm pretending I'm a lawyer. So of those 20 IP contracts, I'm doing my maths, so 18 of them contain one clause, and 2 of them don't contain a clause. So you want to look for outliers, and so what you're trying to do is work out, if I look at one of those 20 contracts, how much variance is there in the other 18 that are similar? So do I need to look at them? And then other heavy-duty legal things, which are tremendously exciting. So, and then we move on to the training aspects. So this is, I've just jumped completely different systems, but that's okay. So this is simply where we're annotating. So on the right-hand side, we're selecting, either the system has selected for you, or we're selecting it and training it to say, in this one, it's assignment. And on the right-hand side, the left-hand side, we've got some rudimentary stuff, but you've got a tag saying it's a purchase agreement, and assignment and change of control, which are tremendously important legal concepts. And so it's a text extraction where it's picking up on patterns, and those boxes, so why is it of interest, the boxes there? I'm glad I asked myself that question, because lawyers typically will transcribe this at great cost and type it up into a Word document and then put it into a report. So the more we can have lawyers doing higher value work and the less clerical work, the better. So the system will, so this happens to be a document that we've redacted and tried to muck it up because we were training the system. So you get a lot of poor quality documents. A lot of them are scans. So the lawyers will then sanitize the text in there. Moving along to eDiscovery. So basically, this is just quickly some of the things. I should look at my notes as well. Some of the things that we're doing in eDiscovery. So the difference between due diligence and eDiscovery is in due diligence, we have the ability to do transfer learning where we've trained a bank of clauses. Some matters will find that it's better that the client's documents or the particular business or whatever is just not, it's too dissimilar to your bank of clauses, so you start from scratch or you do transfer. In eDiscovery, we start each matter from scratch. So I said in contract review, it's say 500 documents of say 200 or 300 pages. So in eDiscovery, we have, so this week we've probably processed 2 or 3 million documents for one case. So we handle reasonably large data sets with obviously multi-terabytes a year. And so each matter, each client, each matter for that client is unique. So we can't do any transfer learning to say this is relevant. And in regards to what we're doing, so we do kind of three or four forms of legal review in eDiscovery. So we do regulatory, so ACCC, ASIC, APRA. We do commercial litigation, so federal court or Supreme Court, and we do royal commissions. Royal commissions are, if those other two are 50% of our work, there's also another 50%, which is doesn't really add up, and that's because we don't get to sleep. But anyway, so when we go through that exercise, then so say a client gives us 2 million documents, so it's just not possible for humans to review 2 million documents, and the client couldn't, we don't have enough people and the client couldn't afford it if we did that. So we'll then look at how can we use AI systems, or how can we use techniques to use some of the AI abstracts and extracts to help us with machine learning and conceptual clustering. I have in there threading. Threading is not AI, but nevertheless we put it in there as one of the techniques that help us. And so we have to battle with, are we doing keyword searching, which everyone of course does keyword searching because it's something tangible that you have something external, as in a regulator has sent you a notice to produce, and the regulator will say, I'm after XYZ. So you use the XYZ and then you run it by the client. Client tells you lots of wonderful things. Some of those are real, some are not real. So if you use, and we always use keyword searching, but then those keywords are a very blunt tool, and yes, those keywords are either inclusionary or exclusionary, but they generally won't find the smoking gun because the smoking gun, they didn't use that terminology. So so just moving right along, so this is the conceptual clustering. So on the left-hand side is simply, I guess, key terms, and you're getting a density and a total. On the right-hand side is then something really crazy that lawyers just freak out and can't understand, but is then looking at, I guess, a space, density and proximity of documents, and then you've got threads of similar documents. Obviously word cloud's a bit of a gimmick, but it does give you another insight into documents. Then obviously we can click on a term, it runs a search for you, shows you all of those documents. And then predictive coding, which is really the machine learning aspect. So this is simply showing one of the workflows we have in predictive coding, because we're running, say, 15, 20 different models within each matter. So you might run a model for relevance, you might run a model for privilege, you might run a model for, say, the CEO's mailbox versus someone else's mailbox. And also we're getting data in tranches. So we say we get 2 million documents, you'll get those 2 million documents throughout the life of the matter, and some on the day when you're supposed to produce the documents to the third party. So we have to have the ability, and the problem with our systems we use is obviously they want a static set of documents, static training, and ideally you want that training to be perfectly explainable and robust, and that you're starting with sampling and looking at a selection of documents, not using bias. That's fine, except lawyers don't work that way, so we have to have the ability to inject intentional bias and then kid ourselves that we did the right thing and didn't miss anything. So, there are some impacts that so we're using this many times a day in many different forms. So there's obviously changes that will happen to lawyers in terms of legal practice and junior lawyers, and particularly for junior lawyers. Junior lawyers are trained in all this crap grunt work. That's what they do. They burn their eyes out looking at documents day in, day out. And so if that work goes, what do how do law firms survive in that you've got the graduate intake, the graduates are trained looking at these things. That's it.